and learners of senior secondary, you are most welcome to our physics class. Our own teacher and expert, Miss Rekha Ashok, is with us. Over to you, ma'am, for the class.
Good evening to all. A very warm welcome to today's physics class. Today we are going to learn a new topic which is wave optics. The two words wave and optics both are familiar to all the learners. When the word wave is telling, it will drive all of us to the seashore. Similarly, the word optics, all of you have studied in the previous sessions, optics as the branch of physics which deals with light and its properties. Then, what is this wave optics? It is again the branch of physics which is dealing with light and its properties by considering light as a wave. So in this chapter, throughout, we will consider the property of a light as a wave and we will discuss all the properties. Before going into the details of the chapter, let us have a little bit about the background of the introduction of this particular theory. In the year 1637, a scientist named Descartes introduced a theory which is called as corpuscular theory. In the corpuscular theory, the properties of the light like reflection, you all of you learned what is reflection, a plane surface. If a ray of light is incident, it will reflect back to the same medium, and if we draw a perpendicular, the angle of incidence will be equal to the angle of reflection. This is the law of reflection we have studied. And if there is a medium interface between two media, 1 and 2, and if light is intercepting at one of the surfaces, after the refraction, means light will enter to the other medium and it will get refract. And here this can be the angle of incidence and this can be the angle of refraction. These two basic phenomena exhibited by the light you have studied, and these two phenomena explained in corpuscular theory of light. And later, the theory was developed by Sir Isaac Newton in his famous book named Optics. And he developed this corpuscular theory, and therefore this theory is attributed to Sir Isaac Newton. But in the year 1678, another scientist named Christian Huygens he developed a theory. That theory is called as the wave theory of light. So in the wave theory, the light is no more considered as a ray, the light is considered as a wave. So what is the basic difference between these two theories? In the corpuscular theory, the law of reflection was very well explained, the law of refraction was also explained, and the Snell's law. And there the Snell's law, they said that when a ray of light traveling from medium 1 to 2, and if medium 1 is a rarer medium and medium 2 if it is a denser medium, the speed of the light will increase. This was one of the assumptions made in the corpuscular theory. When the ray is traveling from a rarer medium to a denser medium, it will bend towards the normal and the speed will increase. But in the introduction of this wave theory by Christian Huygens, he also explained the phenomena of reflection as well as refraction, but he has made a contradictory invention and contradictory statement that when a ray of light is traveling from medium 1 to medium 2, that is from a rarer medium to a denser medium, the ray will bend towards the normal and the speed will decrease. So in the denser medium, the speed decreases. This was highly contradictory to the statement what is given by the Newton's corpuscular theory. So there was no experimental proof for this contradictory statement. It was not experimentally proved. The speed decreases when Huygens told, contradicting to the statement that speed increases in a denser medium. There was no experimental proof. But in the year 1850, scientist named Foucault he has measured the speed of light in air as well as the speed of light in many other media, and he told that the speed of light in water is much less than the speed of light in air. This has given a support for the statement what is given by Christian Huygens. And Christian Huygens' suggestion that the light must be considered as a wave that was not having great acceptance in the scientific world, because a wave to propagate from one point to another point, there must be a medium present. This was a prediction by the different scientific world, by the different scientists, that to propagation of a wave, a medium was compulsory. Without a medium, no wave can be propagated. So many years, 100 more years, the statement has sustained as such without having much proof. But later, a solution for all these problems brought forward by the invention of electromagnetic waves. And you all might have heard about Clerk Maxwell. He has put forward all his electromagnetic wave equation. And he has introduced the presence of traveling electric and magnetic fields, thereby contributing a new wave, what is called as electromagnetic wave. What is an electromagnetic wave? Electromagnetic waves are traveling electric as well as magnetic fields. Electric field and magnetic field. A time varying electric field will contribute, a time varying magnetic field. A time varying magnetic field can contribute to an electric field, thereby mutually perpendicular direction the electric field and magnetic field will travel, and that will be an electromagnetic wave. And it is found that these waves do not require a particular medium for its propagation. So this puzzle has started because those days when Christian Huygens put forward his wave theory and suggested that light must be considered as a wave, so the puzzle started because the solar energy, the light coming from the far place from the sun and reaching to the earth's crust, traveling through the outer space. In empty space, the light is traveling. So if the light is an electromagnetic wave, that problem would be solved. And later, it has been found that the calculation of the speed of the electromagnetic wave by Maxwell, that has given a value very much near to the speed of the light. So it has been concluded that the light is no more a ray, it can be considered as a wave, and that too an electromagnetic wave. Therefore, Maxwell proposed that the light must be an electromagnetic wave. So now you must be confused. In class 6, our teacher taught us that light travel in straight line, and now in class 12, madam is telling that light is no more a ray, or light is not considered to be traveling in straight line, light is a wave. You need not get puzzled. Let us go into that particular aspect of light. So, actually we have learned the light and the properties in a particular branch which is called as geometrical physics. In geometrical physics, you have drawn all the ray diagrams, you have studied reflection, refraction, etc. by considering light as a ray, and ray is travels in straight line. So there, what we have come across is we have studied all these phenomena with the help of mirrors, lenses, pinhole cameras, etc. And we all know that we are seeing light and the visible light range. Visible light has a range of about 0.4 micrometer to 0.7 micrometer wavelength. The wavelength of the visible light ranges from 0.4 micrometer to 0.7 micrometer. This micro stands for 10 to the power of minus 6. So 1 micrometer is 10 to the power of minus 6 meter, and you know that it is a very small measurement. So the wavelength of visible light is very small. So in the geometrical physics, all the concepts were explained with a condition that the wavelength tends to 0. Means, since it is very small wavelength that the light is having, that part is neglected and has taken the concept on the basis of that light travels in straight line. So when the light wave aspect we have to consider. So the light which is traveling in the straight line can cast the shadows of the obstacles of size much more than this particular range. If an obstacle is coming to the path of a beam of light, the shadow will be produced. How the shadow is produced? Because the size of that obstacle is much bigger than the wavelength of the visible light. But suppose if an obstacle of size incomparable to the wavelength, that means half micrometer range of this range, if an obstacle is coming to the way of the light, then the light cannot cast the shadow exactly, the light will bend. This particular nature of the light, that is bending of the light at small edges or corners, that is called as diffraction. Diffraction of light. And also after 40 years of wave theory of light, the Young's double slit experiment was conducted by Thomas Young, and Thomas Young has given an experimental study of interference of light. So interference is nothing but superimposition of two light waves.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yes.
Ma'am, one question is coming. What is the SI unit of wavelength?
Yes. One question is asking what is the SI unit of wavelength. So this is a quantity length. So usually the standard unit for measuring length is meter, but we will be using the lower units like micrometer, degree, angstrom, astronomical units, etc. Different ranges will have different types of units, but the basic unit for measuring wavelength is meter.
Ma'am, one more question is there. Then what is this angstrom?
1 degree angstrom is 10 to the power of minus 10 meters. It is a lower unit. We can measure in degree Armstrong, that is 10 to the power of minus 10.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay. So, these two phenomena like diffraction and interference of the light could not be explained if you are just considering the basic nature of the light, that is light travels in straight line, light is a ray, or it will not be having any property of a wave. If that is considered, these two phenomena couldn't be explained on the basis of that geometrical physics or on the basis of corpuscular theory. Here, the important role of the introduction of the wave theory of the light comes. So let us go to a video which will satisfy your previous knowledge. At the same time, how the light is getting diffracted, that we can see through two video clips. Observe this video. In this video, you can see that there are three metallic strips arranged one in front of the other, having holes at the center. Please make sure that all these three holes are kept one in front of the other in a straight line by passing a string through it. Take a laser light and illuminate one of the slits. You can see that the brightness of that particular slit, green color, it can be observed on the other side. And all the three slits are in one line. Now displace one of the screens and again illuminate the first slit. We cannot see the light on the other side. What does it prove? Light can travel in straight line. Also, light can bend. Observe this activity. Take two razor blades. One is kept parallel to the other, very close to each other. And there is a gap in the blade that you can see, a very wide gap. And the gap between the blades, it is very narrow. As I explained the previous explanation, that it is of micrometer range and this is of millimeter range. Now, if you use a laser light to illuminate these razor blades, and look at the illumination which is coming out through the three gaps. Now you can see three gaps. See, light is very easily passing out through these two gaps. And now if you focus to the middle part, what we are observing on the other side, let us see. Instead of a single bright point at the center, if you keenly observe, you can see that there are darkness and brightness. If you observe it in a dark room, it can be very clear. Observe the activity and center one bright opening, brightness we can see, and on either side we can see that darkness and brightness. So how this darkness and brightness came there? Actually, it was a narrow slit, and through the narrow slit what we have expected is a single brightness, but the light is spread, so light bent at those edges and has entered to the geometrically prohibited region. Since light has bent at that edge, it has entered to this particular part. So that means light can bend at the edges or corners which are having size very, very low, of the order of micrometer, half a micrometer range. This particular phenomenon is called as diffraction of light, and the diffraction of light is explained only on the basis of wave nature of light. So what are the conclusions we can make from these two theories? The first theory what I explained is corpuscular theory, and next theory is the wave theory of light. Corpuscular theory can explain the reflection, refraction, and the major statement what has made in that corpuscular theory is the speed increases when a ray bends towards the normal. That means when a ray travels from a rarer to a denser medium, the speed of the light will increase. And it could not explain diffraction or interference. On the other side, the wave theory, reflection is explained, but in the refraction part, the contradictory statement, the speed will decrease when a ray bends towards the normal. That means when the ray is traveling from rarer to a denser medium, the speed of the light will get decreased. This has been proved by Foucault by measuring the speed of light in water. And this wave theory could explain the diffraction as well as interference of the light. Now, though we are talking about the wave theory, we should understand what really a wave is. So observe this particular video. A tank of still water or a pool of water, and if you put a stone in the middle of that particular pool of still water, this you can observe this kind of a particular wavelets producing on the surface. Ripples will be produced on the surface. So from this we can say that a wave is nothing but a disturbance in a medium. So when you disturb that still water, how it is spreading in the medium, how the disturbance is getting spreaded. So observe this. This is the point of where we have dropped the stone, and it has given some appearance, concentric circle-like appearance. So these points are the points where this disturbance is received by the particles of that water equally, and these particles of water are located at an equal distance from the disturbance, and they are receiving the energy or receiving the disturbance which is occurred at the middle of that pool equally. In what way equally? Since all these particles are located at equidistant from the point of disturbance, these particles started oscillating equally in phase and equally in equal intervals of time. So since
excuse me, ma'am.
Yes. Yes, sir.
Learner, we will go for a break of 2 minutes and then we will come back.
जीवन ये प्रकाशित करने राहों को आलोकित करने हम अपना दीपक स्वयं बने, हम अपना रास्ता स्वयं चुने।
अपना दीपक स्वयं बने, हम अपना रास्ता स्वयं चुने।
जीवन ये प्रकाशित करने राहों को आलोकित करने।
धन साधन समय
पढ़े हम कहीं पढ़े वे विषय की लोच से युक्त हो।
कभी पढ़े हम कहीं पढ़े वे विषय की लोच से युक्त हो।
मित्रों हम उठे और जागे,
मंजिल आने की ध्वनि सुने हम, अपना जीवन स्वयं बने हम, अपना रास्ता स्वयं चुने।
जीवन ये प्रकाशित करने, राहों को आलोकित करने।
राष्ट्रीय मुक्त विद्यालय का है द्वार खुला सबकी खातिर।
शिक्षा परीक्षा का अवसर एक बार ही क्यों मिलता फिर।
शिक्षा और परीक्षा का अवसर एक बार ही क्यों मिलता फिर। दुनिया में इसके केंद्र बहुत,
कोई मन चाहा केंद्र चुने हम, अपना जीवन स्वयं बने हम, अपना रास्ता स्वयं चुने। कोई मन चाहा केंद्र चुने हम, स्वयं बने हम,
Welcome back. So we were discussing what really a wave is. So when we disturb a pool of water which was still, the disturbance will reach to the particles of that particular water medium equally at equal intervals of time to those particles which are equally placed from that particular point of disturbance, and those particles which are coming at equal distance from that particular source will start oscillating. That will create a crust or a trough. Then those crust or a trough will transfer its oscillation or vibration to the neighborhood, and from there it will be transferred to the next neighborhood, and thereby the disturbance will travel from one point to another point in a particular medium. Hence, these particular points where the particles of the medium started oscillating equally in a particular phase, that is named with a particular name. That name is called as wave front. So how can we define wave front? The spelling WAVEFRONT. So the locus of points oscillating in same phase is called a wave front. So the wave fronts can create crust as well as it can create trough, and the wave fronts will be propagating in concentric circles. If the medium is disturbance is at a particular point, it will be increasing order of diameter of the circle. It will be going to the boundary of that particular pool of water or what we are considering, and such a way it can be called as a circular wavefront. But in 3 dimension, if you have a point source, this circular wavefront will give us a feeling of spherical wavefront. So circular wavefront in 3 dimension, we can say that it's spherical in shape. So the wavefront will be propagating one after the other, transferring its energy from one wavefront to the another wavefront. The direction of the propagation of the wave will be in a direction perpendicular to these wavefronts. So this red arrow mark you observe, that is the direction of propagation of the wave. That will be always in a direction perpendicular to the wavefront. At the same time, this direction, the energy of the wave will be carried, and at the same time, in a particular space, if we want to draw the rays, if we consider for light, if we want to draw the rays, this arrow mark can represent the rays of light. So here in this picture, you can see circular wavefront and the propagation of the wavefront in one particular direction, that is increasing concentric circles of increasing diameter, and the direction of propagation of the wave will be always perpendicular to the wavefronts. So, speed of a wave is the speed with which the wavefront moves outward from a source, and the energy of a wave travels in a direction perpendicular to the wave. So the speed will be the speed of the wavefront. Speed of the wave will be the speed of the wavefront, and energy travels in a direction perpendicular to the wavefront. So depending on the nature of the sources, we have different types of wavefront. Suppose if you have a point source of light. Now, though we have explained and seen the video with respect to water, but actually we are dealing with the light. So light we can compare as the ripples in the water. So now if you have a point source of light, the source of light will spread light throughout the medium, and how the light is spreading in a medium, we will be getting spherical wavefront. So what is a point source? Point source can be considered as a source of light whose size is very small compared to the distance. So distant stars we will consider as point source. So point source is such a source whose distance is very much large compared to the size. And if you have parallel rays, so these blue arrow marks represent the rays, and if we have parallel rays, we can have a plane wavefront. If the source of light is narrow and thin, like a line source, then the shape of the wavefront can be cylindrical in shape. So most commonly in this chapter, we will be coming across with the spherical wavefront, plane wavefront, and cylindrical wavefront. A part of this spherical wavefront can also be considered as a plane wavefront. Part of the cylindrical wavefront can be considered as again a plane wavefront. Or at very far of distance, at infinite distance from a point source, if we are considering the wavefront, then also it can be considered as a plane wavefront. These are the three different types of wavefront. So as I have explained to you, Christian Huygens, he proposed this wave theory of light. Actually, he has given a geometrical construction for the propagation of the wavefront. So what is this geometrical construction? That I can show you with the chalk and talk method. So we have seen spherical wavefront. So let us take a part of a spherical wavefront. So Christian Huygens has given a geometrical construction for the propagation of the wavefront. Each point on this wavefront will act as a source for the secondary wavefronts. So how many points we can consider? We can consider infinite number of points. So for the convenience, I have taken very few points, and from these points we can construct secondary wavefront. So how we will construct? So we know that in a particular medium, the speed of the light will remain same. So let us take in air the speed of the light as c. So if you are taking a t time interval, we want to calculate where this wavefront is in this particular time interval. What we can do? We have studied in lower class that distance by time is equal to speed. Therefore, speed into time. Speed, if we multiply with the time, we can calculate it as a distance. So from different points on this spherical wavefront, we have to draw arc with radius c into t. Arcs of radius c into t. So circles we have to draw of radius c into t. Not many circles we can draw. So maybe number of circles we can draw. The tangents of all these circles if we connect, and that can be the secondary wavefront. So this is the geometrical construction given by Christian Huygens, and C into T will be the radius, and we can construct lot of circles, and tangents connecting the each circle will give the new wavefront. So you may ask why we are not drawing the wavefront in the backward. So Huygens has made that big assumption that the energy of the backward wavefront is 0. Only we will be considering the forward wavefront. From this wavefront you can construct circles, innumerable number of circles you can construct with the radius c into t, and that distance if you draw circles and tangents, that will again give us the secondary wavefronts. This geometrical construction is really speaking Huygens principle. So what is Huygens principle? Huygens principle had given a geometrical construction for the propagation of the wavefront. Each point on the primary wavefront will act as a source for the secondary wavefront, and the direction of propagation of the wavefront, that energy will be carried, the energy of the wave will be carried in a direction normal to this wavefront, and that can be considered as, in the case of light, it can be considered as the direction of the rays of the light. So this is Huygens principle. So on the basis of Huygens principle, we can study the law of reflection and the law of refraction.
Ma'am,
So by considering,
one question is there, ma'am.
yes,
Does light have mass?
it's not audible, please, louder please.
Does light have mass?
Light has
Mass. Yeah.
So when we consider the light as a wave, if it has mass, the wave nature of any massive body we cannot see. It's a huge mass. So de Broglie is saying that is a very big concept. So when the mass is big, the wave nature of the mass we will not be able to see. And at the same time, we cannot say that it is a massless. So when we come to the quantum theory, light consisting of particles, which is called as photons. So rest mass of the photon is 0, and therefore we are considering its wavelength. When we consider to the particle nature, we have to consider a mass for the particle. But it is a big concept beyond the comprehension level of particular. This we have to study quantum theory and also the particle nature of the light.
One more question is there, ma'am.
Yes, sir.
Are the electromagnetic waves longitudinal or traversal?
Transverse.
Electromagnetic waves longitudinal or
They are
transversal?
transverse. So in the next sessions, we will come across that electromagnetic waves are transverse in nature. So just now I told you they are the traveling electric as well as the magnetic fields. So these two fields are perpendicular to each other, and the direction of the wave is perpendicular to both these. Therefore, it is a transverse wave. In the next session, we will see a big phenomenon which can be exhibited only by this transverse wave, that is polarization of light.
Ma'am,
That we will see.
one more question is there.
Yes, sir.
This thing, explain diffraction at a single slit.
Sir, that will be, see, after reflection and refraction, diffraction at a single slit, derivation and explanation in the wave optics part 2, I only will be dealing.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
So first, let us see the reflection of light. So in the lower classes, you have studied reflection, that when a ray of light is falling on a surface, it will bounce back. Angle of incidence equal to the angle of reflection we have seen. Same concept we have to prove by considering the wave nature of the light. So consider a reflecting surface. Let us name it as X, Y. So always reflecting surface we will mark like this. Now instead of a ray, we are going to consider a wave front. So what is a wave front we have seen? Wave front is a locus or the point at which the particles of the medium oscillating in phase. So let us consider a plane wave front incident on this reflecting surface. Let us name it as AB. So AB is a plane wave front. So the two extreme points I am taking, I am drawing two normals, two perpendicular lines. These two lines can be the rays, because the rays travel, rays are represented normal to a wavefront. So this is a plane wavefront. These two lines represent the two extreme rays. In between, many number of rays will be there. So this beam or this particular wavefront touched the reflecting surface A initially and later in time from the point B. So after some time, it will not take much time, after some time it has touched the point B. Let us mark that point as C. So by that time, this wavefront from the point B touches C. Already, since it has touched the reflecting surface AB, secondary wavelets will start originating. How we will draw the secondary wavelets? We have to construct based on Huygens principle. Since this is a reflection of light, in reflection of light, the basic principle is that the speed of the light will remain same. Since the speed is remaining same, what distance it is covering here? The BC distance. The same distance, the secondary wavelets will grow to an arc. The secondary wavelets will grow to an arc of length which is equal to BC. Draw a tangent from C to the point. Now connect these 2 points. Now this will become the reflected wavefront. A dash C will be the reflected wavefront. So now this arc, if we are showing, that arc itself will be explaining the Huygens principle. Draw a normal. Normal means a line perpendicular to the surface. This angle can be marked as angle I. This we can say that angle R, angle of reflection. And if this angle is I, and we know that this angle is 90 degree and this angle is also 90 degree. How it is 90 degree? Because here we have drawn all these lines normal. Therefore, this angle will be 90 degree and this angle will also be 90 degree. And in this particular case, we can say that if this angle is I, this angle will also be equal to I. And for this triangle, this angle will be equal to R. From the symmetry of the triangles, we can prove that this angle is I and this angle is equal to R. So here also we can draw the normal. Now, observe the triangles A, B, C and the triangle A dash C. Are you observing any similarity? The side AC is equal to AC. Both the triangles are having a common side and the side A dash is equal to BC side because the BC length we have taken from here and drawn the path and A dash is equal to BC and these two angles are equal to 90 degree. It is a right angle triangle. Therefore, we can say that the sides are equal for both the triangles. So the triangles, which are the triangles? Triangles ABC and triangle A dash C. They are congruent. We can say that they are congruent triangles. Therefore, angle I will be equal to angle R. When angle I is equal to angle R, that is nothing but the law of reflection. This very easily we have proved in the case of ray concentration, but little bit complicated when you take the wavefront. So I hope you understood how to construct a wavefront. So here AB is the incident wavefront and take the distance from B to C, draw an arc and draw the tangent from C to that particular point. That will become the A dash C dash C will become the reflected wavefront. And similarity and congruency of the triangle, we can prove that angle I is equal to angle R. And again we can say that incident ray, the normal and the reflected ray all will lie in the same plane. That is the second law of reflection. So angle I is equal to angle R. Similarly, we have to prove the law of refraction. So what is the difference between reflection and refraction? The major difference is that reflection takes place in the same medium, but refraction takes place when the light ray travels from one medium to another medium. So let us consider an interface. XY be an interface separating medium 1 and medium 2. Again consider a wavefront named AB. Incident on the refracting surface. Now the wavefront touches the refracting surface at A first and later in time from B. Later in time from B to the point C. Let us draw two perpendiculars to the edges. They will represent the rays. They are representing the incident rays. Now, how we can construct the refracted wavefront? So, in the case of reflection, we have taken BC is equal to the distance how much the secondary wavelets have originated from the point A. So, from here also secondary wavelets will originate. But since it is a refraction, the secondary wavelets will come to the second medium. So how long it will travel? Because this is medium 1 and this is medium 2. If medium 1, if the speed is V1, the medium 2, the speed will vary. The speed of the light will change. So if you are taking it as V1, here we can take it as V2. So for a particular time interval, if you take T as the time interval and we can take the BC distance as V1 into T. The distance covered by the wavefront to touch the refracting surface BC we can write as V1 into T. The same distance the light will not cover in the second medium. How can we calculate? If you know the speed as V2, for the same interval T, you can construct an arc of length V2 into T, but definitely V2 into T must be lesser than this BC. Can you say why? Because if we consider that this is a rarer medium and if this is a denser medium, the speed of the light will be less in the denser medium. Therefore, the distance covered must be lesser than what in the previous medium. Let us draw an arc. Draw an arc of length which is lesser than BC, which is equal to V2 into T. And now draw the tangent. And mark this point as A dash. So A dash is equal to V2 into T. Connect the point A to A dash. Now A dash C will be the refracted wavefront. Draw the normals to these 2 points. These can be representing the refracted rays. Draw the normal to this point N, if this is angle I, and draw normal to this point. This can be angle R. Therefore, if this angle is I, this angle will also be equal to I. If this is R, this will also be equal to R. Now, this angle, as we have already discussed, this is 90 degree. This will also be 90 degree, and hence ABC is a right angle triangle. So in triangle ABC, if you take sine I, sine of angle I can be taken as opposite side by hypotenuse. So opposite side is BC and hypotenuse is AC. Let it be equation number 1. Similarly, from this triangle A dash C, if you find sine R is equal to opposite side, that is A dash divided by AC. Equation number 2. From equation 1 and 2, if you find sine I by sine R, which is equal to, we can say BC divided by A dash. So what is BC? Already we have taken it as V1 into T. So this is equal to V1 into T. What is A dash? A dash is equal to V2 into T. So V2 into T. T and T can be cancelled. Therefore, this is equal to V1 by V2. So sine I by sine R is equal to V1 by V2. This is nothing but Snell's law. Ratio of sine of angle of incidence to the sine of angle of refraction will give the ratios of the speed of the light in one medium to the other medium, and that will always remain as a constant, that is called as Snell's law. So if V1 is air, then this equation we can change. V1 can be changed to the speed of the light as c. V1 can be equal to c if it is air. Speed of light in air is c. So in that case, we will get another constant. So this V1 by V2 is always remaining as a constant. That constant is called as refractive index. Refractive index of a medium. So the medium 2, if I write the refractive index as N2, and the medium 1, the refractive index I can write it as N1. Therefore, sin I by sin R is equal to V1 by V2 will get as the refractive index of the second medium with respect to the first. So V1 by V2 will be equal to N2 by N1. So sin I by sin R is equal to V1 by V2, which is equal to N2 by N1. Ratios of refractive indices of these two media. So what is this refractive index? So refractive index is the ability of any medium to bend the light. So how the light ray is getting bent in a particular medium, that is calculated with a particular constant related to that medium, that is called as refractive index. So refractive index is measured on the basis of optical density of a medium. And you have studied in lower classes about density of any medium. Density of matter you have studied. But this density of matter and optical density, slightly difference is there, but in more or less many situations, if it is a dense body, optically it will be denser. But in rare cases, some cases, it will be coming in the reverse way. So, optical density of the medium measures the refractive index. So, sin I by sin R is equal to V1 by V2, which is equal to N2 by N1, where N2 is called as refractive index of the second medium and N1 is called as refractive index of the first medium, and this law is called as Snell's law. And if the first medium is air, we can say that V1 will be C. In that case, we will get the refractive index of the second medium itself we will get, which is called as absolute refractive index. Therefore, we can take an equation N, absolute refractive index of a medium, as C by V. I hope you understood the law of refraction. If you have any doubt, you can clarify. Let us have a break.
So, okay, learners, so we will go for a break, and after that break, we will resume our class. You can send your question on sdmis.nis.ac.in.
जीवन ये प्रकाशित करने, राहों को आलोकित करने,
जीवन ये प्रकाशित करने, राहों को आलोकित करने, हम अपना दीपक स्वयं बने, हम अपना रास्ता स्वयं चुने।
अपना दीपक स्वयं बने, हम अपना रास्ता स्वयं चुने।
जीवन ये प्रकाशित करने, राहों को आलोकित करने।
धन साधन समय की सीमा से विद्यालय जो मुक्त हो,
धन साधन समय की सीमा से विद्यालय जो मुक्त हो।
कभी पढ़े हम कहीं पढ़े, वे विषय की लोच से युक्त हो।
कभी पढ़े हम कहीं पढ़े, वे विषय की लोच से युक्त हो।
मित्रों हम उठे और जागे,
मंजिल आने की ध्वनि सुने।
जीवन ये प्रकाशित करने, राहों को आलोकित करने।
राष्ट्रीय मुक्त विद्यालय का है द्वार खुला सबकी खातिर।
शिक्षा परीक्षा का अवसर एक बार ही क्यों मिलता फिर।
शिक्षा और परीक्षा का अवसर एक बार ही क्यों मिलता फिर। दुनिया में इसके केंद्र बहुत,
कोई मन चाहा केंद्र चुने, हम अपना दीप स्वयं बने, हम अपना रास्ता स्वयं चुने। कोई मन चाहा केंद्र चुने, स्वयं बने, हम
Welcome back, learners. After this short break, over to you, ma'am, for the next session.
So welcome back, friends. So already we have seen hygiene's principle, and now in this particular slide, I think once again you can see clearly the pictures, the wavefront, the circles which are drawn with a radius of c into t, and the secondary wavefront how we have drawn as a tangent connecting from all the points. This is for a spherical wavefront, and this is for a plane wavefront. Plane wavefront, the secondary wavefront will also be plane. So make sure that always if a question is asking hygiene's principle and draw the wavefront, always make sure that you have to draw arcs or circles of particular radius c into t. The statement of the hygiene's principle: each point on the wavefront acts as a source for the secondary wavefronts and propagates in all the directions with the speed of the wave. So really speaking, hygiene's principle is essentially a geometrical construction for the propagation of a wave. So already we have seen this on the blackboard. More clearly, you just observe, as I discussed, AB is the incident wavefront and it is touching the point A. It is growing to an arc of AA1, which is equal to BC, and drawing tangent from C to that particular point. So A1C will be the reflected wavefront, and we have proved that angle I is equal to angle R. Usually questions can be asked, prove the law of reflection on the basis of hygiene's principle. So if at all a question is asking like that, you must show this arc. Without that arc, it is no more called as hygiene's principle. The same thing, the refraction of the light. So incident wavefront AB, and from the point A, we have drawn another arc AE, but it is at a length which is much lesser than BC with a distance V2 into T. And the tangent is connected from C to E, and this will be the refracted wavefront. And we have calculated the Snell's law, sin I, sin R, sin I by sin R, which is equal to BC by AE. And finally, we have proved sin I by sin R is equal to V1 by V2. And if the light ray travels from air or vacuum to a medium, N1 can be written as C by V1. Similarly, N2 can be written as C by V2. Therefore, V1 by V2 is equal to N2 by N1, which is equal to sin I by sin R. This is nothing but Snell's law. So what we have learned? We have learned what is a wavefront. Definition for the wavefront as the locus of points oscillating in same phase. And we have learned hygiene's principle. Hygiene's principle gives a geometrical construction for the propagation of a wave. Each point on the wavefront acts as a source for the secondary wavefront, and wavefront propagate in all the direction with the speed of the wave. And also we have studied the geometrical construction for the reflection and refraction of the wavefront, and hence we have proved the law of reflection and refraction. So this can be asked for 3 mark or even 2 mark questions. So what are the equations we have learned? So sin I by sin R is equal to V1 by V2. Again, V1 by V2 is equal to N2 by N1, and C by V is equal to N, where C is the speed of the light in air, V is the speed of the light in the medium, and N is the refractive index. And C by lambda, this is an equation which we are borrowing from the previous chapter, because there are some questions in the exercise where we have to come across this equation also. Here the lambda is the wavelength of the light, and this letter is reading nu. Nu is the frequency of the light. So remember these 4 equations related to what we have learned. So let us solve a numerical problem. So when students learn physics, always they complain that solving numericals, it is very difficult. So if we follow certain steps systematically, the numericals will be an enjoyable part of physics. So here a question is there: monochromatic light of wavelength 589 nanometer is incident from air on a water surface. What are the wavelength, frequency and speed of the reflected light as well as the refracted light? So question you have to read once or twice, and line by line what are the data given that you have to understand. So wavelength, so all this data, instead of writing or remembering as a particular data like a wavelength, the notations if you are remembering, it will make you to catch the equations very fast. So wavelength always noted with the letter lambda. So we can say that first line we have an information, we have a data, lambda is equal to 589 nanometer. There is no other data given in the second line or third line. Last in bracket N of water is given. What is this N of water? It is refractive index of water equal to 1.33. So first we have to write what are the given data. So while writing the answer, given data we have to write. As I told you, lambda is equal to 589 nanometer. Nanometer is not the standard unit for wavelength. Therefore, we have to convert it into meter. 1 nano means 10 to the power of minus 9. Therefore, 589 into 10 raised to minus 9 meter, and N is equal to 1.33. Next step is to remember to calculate what is asked in the question. Remember the equation. So we have to calculate wavelength, frequency and speed of the reflected wave. So the wavelength is given already. So one point you have to remember here is whether the wavelength will remain same or whether it will be different for the reflected and the refracted. So that part we have to take care. So what will happen to the wavelength? So first part, the reflected light, the lambda will remain same. So what is the given data? 589 nanometer and 589 10 raised to minus 9 meter, that is the wavelength. Then we have to guess the value of speed of light in air, because it is reflection and it is happening for the air to water interface. Therefore, the speed of the reflected light will be in air only. So the speed of the light in air is equal to 3 into 10 to the power of 8 meter. And frequency we have to calculate using the equation nu equal to C by lambda. So substitute the values. C is 3 into 10 to the power of 8 and wavelength is 589 into 10 to the power of minus 9. If we solve this part, we will get the value for the frequency as 5.09 into 10 to the power of 14 hertz. So we have calculated wavelength, frequency and speed of the reflected light we have calculated. So the first part of the problem is solved. So next is for refracted part. So refracted part, there also we have to keenly take the concept that frequency of a light will not change when it is changing its medium. Frequency will remain same. Therefore, we can borrow this quantity nu from the first calculation as such for the second medium, means in the water. And again, we have learned the equation that speed of light in water is equal to C by N. How this equation has come? C by V is equal to N, that we have studied. Therefore, V is equal to C by N. Substitute the value of C and N, we can calculate the speed. So C is 3 into 10 to the power of 8 and N is 1.33. Therefore, the speed will be 2.26 into 10 to the power of 8 meter per second. And lambda is equal to V by nu. So V we have calculated here and speed in the frequency is remaining same. Therefore, V by nu. V is 2.26 and 10 to the power of 8 meter per second. And frequency is 5.09 into 10 raised to 14. So if you calculate this, we will be getting the value for the wavelength as 444 nanometer. No need to put the value in nanometer. You can put it in the powers of 10 and can take the unit meter also. So let us solve another problem. So here, this question, the refractive index of glass is given 1.5. So what is the speed of the light in glass? So only one data is given, and how can we solve this? First we have to write the given data. So what are the given data? N is equal to 1.5. Now we have to relate. Speed of light in glass is asked. So speed in air is 3 into 10 to the power of 8 meter per second. This is a standard constant speed of light. And the relation C by V is equal to N that we have studied. Therefore, V is equal to C by N. So C is 3 into 10 to the power of 8 and N is 1.5. If you solve this, we will be getting the answer as 2 into 10 to the power of 8 meter per second. So always the answer, there must be a unit. So let us see another question. Is the speed of light in glass independent of the color of the light? If not, which of these colors, red and violet, travels slower in a glass prism? So what is your opinion? The speed of light in a glass independent of the color? Definitely not. So no is the answer. It depends on the color. That means it depends on the wavelength. Now the wavelength of red is much greater than wavelength for violet. So the visible light ranges from violet to red. The refractive index of red is lesser than a refractive index of violet. And hence, what will happen? The speed of red is greater than the speed of violet. So which will travel slowly? The violet color will be slowly traveling in a glass prism. The reason is that a refractive index of violet is much more compared to red. So these two questions, if you have a pen and paper, you can take down as a homework. When a monochromatic light is incident on a surface separating two media, the reflected and refracted light both have same frequency as the incident frequency. Explain why. So I will discuss this answer because I got a question also, whether the reflection is a particle to particle interaction. A question was asked. So I can explain answer to this question, and the same way it will be the answer for that question which is given to me also. So a monochromatic light is incident on a surface. So when light is incidenting, that particular light will have a particular frequency. So the atoms of that particular matter will take energy from that particular light, and the atoms will start oscillating with a frequency equal to the frequency of the incident light. Then the emergent light or the reflected light that is coming out from the matter. So then the frequency of the emergent light will be equal to the frequency of the oscillating atom of the matter. Therefore, the particle to particle interaction means energy will be taken from the incident light by the atoms of the surface, and then the atoms will be oscillating, and the reflected light will have a frequency which is equal to the frequency of the oscillating atoms of that particular matter. The fourth question, when light travels from rarer to a denser medium, the speed decreases. Does the reduction in the speed imply a reduction in the energy carried by a wave? So this reduction in the energy will not be affected with the speed of the light. The energy of a wave is just because of the amplitude. Amplitude of the wave measures the energy. So another question which I have got, that is whether the Snell's law is applicable when the ray of light is traveling from denser to a rarer medium. Very well, it is applicable. Only thing is we have to reverse the equation. So angle of incidence where it is coming, that will be sin I. Angle of refraction where it is coming, that will be in the medium 2. Rarer medium it will become. So if you take the speed of the light in the denser medium as V1, the rarer medium as V2, again you can write sin I by sin R is V1 by V2. So it is very well applicable. The reversibility of light is very well applicable. Light can travel in the reverse direction also. So Snell's law is very well applicable for the denser to the rarer medium as well as from the rarer to the denser medium also. And the lot many questions were asked regarding interference and interference fringe width and what is interference, all these things. Since I have not covered those topics today, so then coming sessions, wave optics 2, we will be covering interference and diffraction. There I shall clarify. After teaching, I shall clarify your doubts. Thank you for the patient listening. Let us wind up our class.